CoCo War Stories is a chronological account of experiences I had back in the day developing games for Tandy and Activision for the Tandy color computer. And I've told a lot of these stories at previous conventions, so you're probably going to, I only have so many stories, so you're going to have heard a lot of them before. But I do include a fair bit of new material toward the end. I'm mentioning a lot of interesting things you might want to find later. This slide and the last slide lists where to look. When I did this presentation for Tandy Assembly, they had a strict rule that there is to be no swearing. And so to get around that, I decided to use a code word because I'm going to need to use a bad word at one point. So for the purposes of this talk, it will be the A word, which will be aardvark. And I decided just to keep with that, even though I think the rules are a little looser here. So I'll be talking a lot about the game developers Dale Lear and Steve Bjork. Sadly, neither one of them are still with us, but they provided us with many fantastic games, far more than myself. I only consider myself a minor star in the CoCo constellation, but I'm proud to have been a part of it all, and all of this, talking about all of this gives me a wonderful feeling of nostalgia. So my poor wife might have hoped that she was marrying this guy, but when she got dragged along for the ride, she discovered that she had married this guy. My first exposure to computers was a PDP-8i at the local community college. My first ever computer job was managing this beast, and I learned BASIC on it, of course, but also I learned assembler. That came in super handy later. At my first computer job just out of college in 1982, I met this guy, my co-worker Dale Lear, and we quickly became friends. When home computers became a thing, I dreamed of getting a computer of my very own. At the time, I had my eye on an Atari ST, but Dale and several others at work, including another friend, Jim Issel, Dale's brother Paul, and a guy named Bob Newcomb, had bought a Tandy color computer. They all ganged up on me and showed me what this machine could do, and they talked me into it. Yeah, I want one of those. And we had a sizable federal tax refund coming up. So I told my wife, and she said, no, we need to get a kerosene heater. This drafty old farmhouse that we're living in is very cold, especially in the winter. But I want to buy a color computer. No, she said, we're getting a kerosene heater, and that's final. So when I bought the color computer, she had some kind of feelings about that. And before long, she was saying, you spend too much time fooling around on that damned computer. So we did get the kerosene heater soon after that with the state tax refund check, which is why I'm alive today. And I carpooled to work each day with Dale and Jim and several other co-workers who all owned color computers in Dale's old rattletrap antique milk van. Why we were commuting in a milk van, I could not tell you, other than it just sort of seemed cool at the time, I guess. On the way, we discussed concepts for games we hope to make, shouting over the roar of the engine. Dale's idea was for a game he called Superfly versus the Amazing Chomping Things. You would be directing the path of a little fly around the screen with your joystick, being chased by a pair of chomping false teeth and various other objects. The false teeth did not happen, but he did finish the game. He sent it to Tandy on a Quasar Commander cart that he'd repurposed. He'd cracked it open to install his own EEPROM to try to really impress them. It worked. This, of course, was the game that became Double Back. My ideas became the game Temple of Rom. Another big influence was the fantasy novels of Catherine Kurtz, and thus teleportation in the game happens via transfer portals, which is a term from her books. I even had a user's manual with an elaborate backstory for the game. A tale of an intrepid adventurer in a fantasy setting sent to reclaim the temple for its original inhabitants who had been driven out by an occupying evil empire. But I wanted to do some things differently than the Atari adventure game. Wait, did I miss a slide? Oh yeah, it was inspired by the Atari 2600 adventure game. Remember that? It skipped a slide. So I wanted smooth scrolling in a large maze. The Atari adventure game, you got to the edge of the screen and then it went bloop, and then you were on the next screen. So I wanted smooth scrolling, just like that. So I developed Temple of Rom on an early Mercedes Silver color computer with chiclet keys, cassette player, a Mercedes Silver RCA color TV, and an Edit-A-Sem cart. No floppy disk drive. Too expensive. The source was on 3 20-minute cassette tapes. Needless to say, I kept meticulous backups on numerous cassettes. Some of those early color computer models had a glitch in the power supply that would cause intermittent crashes, and I had one of those. I would be working on the game and sometimes the video would fade in and out, warning me that a crash was imminent. I would whip off the cover. None of us have the covers connected with screws, do we? And I would spray Freon into the power supply. And that would stabilize things until I could, write the source back out. One day that happened while I was saving to tape. So I went to spray Freon into the computer and nothing happened. The can was empty. So I leaned over and started blowing frantically into the power supply with my breath, hyperventilating until I almost passed out, and finally I heard the motor relay click off for the final time and I was saved. So I sent Tandy a floppy with the game on it, and after a few weeks Mark Siegel called me back. "It's a beautiful game," he said. This is totally cliche. But I said, "Oh, I didn't hear that. What did you say?" I said, "It's a beautiful game." Tandy bought both Doubleback and the Temple of Rom, and that put us on the map. Mark did mention, "I hate the game though." I told him he could change it to whatever he wanted, but somehow that never came up again. So Temple of Rom it was. ROM was, of course, a subtle reference to read-only memory, although I was careful not to make it too obvious. I spelled it ROM with a capital R and lowercase o and m in all correspondence. Some of their replies listed it as ROM in all caps, though, so I think they were on to me. I lurked around in Radio Shack stores for months looking for my first copy in the wild. When I finally got one, I got a surprise. Unbeknownst to me, they had thrown out my user's manual and put in their own with a space exploration theme. "You are an archaeologist for the Galactic Council of Free Worlds, sent to discover the mysteries of the Temple of Rom, located on the desert planet Rolok." Rolok? Who the what now? Oh, color spelled backwards, right. At least they kept the transfer portal terminology. That's about the only thing that survived the change to Temple of Rom in space. Temple of Rom sold quite well. My first royalty check was in the tens of thousands. My wife's eyes got quite wide when she saw that. "Why don't you go fool around some more on that damn computer?" she said. I then developed a game called Bomb Threat and sent it in, hoping that lightning would strike twice. But Tandy didn't want that one, although my kids really loved it. More on that later. I also started on a game I called OmniStar. That was a game where you hacked into a computer network, but I never finished it. I really don't know why. Dale and Jim and I got online and joined the Delphi CoCo Special Interest Group, sponsored by Rainbow Magazine. This is a screenshot from an online archive of Delphi messages that I put on the web, by the way. Early on, Dale called up Rainbow and said, want us to write articles for you? "No, we're good." I have a prototype CoCo 3. Yes, please. That was before anybody had a CoCo 3. Just a few developers had a CoCo 3, and Rainbow Magazine had heard about it. So he says, well, I have one. And it's like, well, okay, yes, you can write articles for us now. So I wrote a Color Computer 3 terminal program that was originally named RickyTerm, similar to the name of another popular terminal program, MikeyTerm. Delphi later asked me to add some features to that, bought it, and christened it as DelphiTerm. So we all started writing articles for them. Dale would usually write the programs. I'd clean them up a bit and write the articles. Okay, yeah. Jim Issel wrote game reviews for the magazine. There was a lot of friendly competition between the Delphi folks and the CompuServe users, and people had been begging me to do a UUCP implementation so that CoCo 3 users could connect to the internet, exchange email, and post to Usenet news. I mean, the internet was barely a thing at that point. But there was already a team working on that, so I didn't see the need until they announced that they were almost done and they would be releasing it on CompuServe only. Not allowed to be uploaded to Delphi. Well, that is fair. They did the work, so they get to decide where it gets uploaded. But I wanted it to be on Delphi too. So I started coding my own implementation. I was the Usenet manager at work, so it was convenient to test by connecting to my own node, and it took me about a month. Pretty soon the other team posted on the CoCo mailing list on Usenet, if you can read this, you are reading the first email posted to the list from a CoCo 3. And I replied and said, actually, I posted an email from my CoCo 3 last week. Now you might imagine that that caused a bit of consternation among the CompuServe guys. But imaginings are all you'd have. They were nothing but gracious to me. They were really, really very nice. I was impressed. That UUCP implementation was later expanded by Bob Bilson and is now known as UUCP BB. So this slide is the historic entry of my UUCP node C Central, which was a CoCo 3 in my den, into the UUCP maps. Then Activision came, calling, wanting Shanghai, and I got to visit Activision's headquarters, meet my project manager Sherry, who really was wonderful. She sent flowers on the birth of my daughter, and I demonstrated a CoCo 3 for her, running the famous Sockmaster bouncing ball demo. Somebody passing by saw that in action and said, oh yeah, in a rather bored voice, right, the Amiga bouncing ball. And look again, Sherry told him, it's a Tandy Color Computer 3. He did a double take. I didn't know we were doing things for the color computer. We are now. So the Color Computer 3 port of Shanghai was born. Due to memory constraints, I could only fit a small fraction of the Victory Dragon screen despite my best efforts. And then disaster struck. This brings us to The Last Ninja. Various people writing books have called me up over the years, invariably eager to get me to spill the tea on this one infamous project. As the saying goes, success has many fathers. Failure is an orphan. But everybody loves a good train wreck. This project was originally offered to Dale Lear, who turned it down. Dale was a pretty smart guy. That should have been a big clue for me. Here's the schedule for the game that Activision sent me. If you look it over, you'll see they expected coding to take 4 months. Right. Note the $1,000 for contract execution up at the top. That's the signing bonus. That will turn out to be important in a little bit. The game was to be done on OS 9. OS 9 is good for many things, but in my opinion, this game was not one of them. For one thing, there was a polyphonic soundtrack during gameplay. Google gameplay videos of the Amiga version, and you'll find that it sounds completely awesome. My best efforts at music for the one demo I produced were miserably pathetic. Now, if you feel like you're not going to make the deadline, please let us know, Sherry told me, and I reached a point where I knew that I had to admit defeat. And so I returned to Activision headquarters, where they led me to a room where I met up with this guy, Steve Bjork. Now, opinions vary on Steve, I know. I will say that he was an interesting guy, and another way you could phrase it is that Steve was a lot, but I did like him. He looked over the source code listing that I had brought him and immediately focused on the fact that it was structured as assembly routines called by a mainline written in C. "Oh, I see your problem right there. Oh, this will not do at all," he said. He felt that was too inefficient. Now, he wasn't wrong. That was inefficient, but not, in my opinion, not to the degree he thought. And he thought that was like, that's the key. I'm going to do it all in assembler, and that's going to make it super, super easy. And I knew better, sadly. But anyway, no matter. I was rid of the project, and I was about to walk out of that room a happy, free man. "This is going to be easy," he said. Sherry asked me if it was okay if they gave him my early completion bonus that was on that sheet of paper that you saw earlier. Well, let's see. Early. Completion. My work was neither early nor complete, so I felt I had no right whatever to say boo about it. "Sure, no problem here." Steve was elated to hear this. "Oh man, we're going to make a mint on this project." Steve did not make a mint on that project. He failed just like I did. He later complained that there were aspects to that game that nobody told him about, like one screen where a freaking dragon rose up to do battle with you from a river that you were crossing. They didn't tell me about that either. I had no idea, but fortunately by that time it was water under the bridge. He showed people, he was kind of peeved about that. I can't say that I blame him. He showed people a demo of how far he got at a convention once. He did get further than I did. There were animated enemies able to do combat, and they just stood motionless for my demo. Much later, I was at a restaurant after a convention where he was a speaker, and he was seated opposite me, and someone was praising him for something or other, and he felt the need to reply by saying, "That's nice. Of course, some people think I'm an aardvark. Isn't that right, Rick?" He leaned in close and hissed, "I'll have you know we lost our shirts on that project." I was baffled as to where that aardvark bit came from. I don't ever recall making that comment about Steve, although I suppose it's possible. The only money that I got from that project was that $1,000 for signing on. Steve noted that later, and he decided he wanted that money, and he threatened to sue me if I didn't fork it over. So, "I'm sorry to hear that," was my response, and happily I never heard anything beyond that. After that, I took a break and did some OS 9 stuff for a while. This is back before Raspberry Pis made Unix affordable to the masses, and OS 9 really was the best game in town. Dale's TS editor was very VI-like, but there was a lot of VI commands in it that I didn't support, that it didn't support, that I was really in the habit of using, and that was annoying me. So I altered a copy of the TS edit source code that Dale gave me to add them, and I distributed it as a patch file for legal reasons, although that was pretty much of a joke. Yeah, here's the patch file. The patch file says, take everything that you have here, throw it out, now put this in, you know. So eventually I quit the scene altogether, but came back many years later, and this is why I feel a certain humility. Some of you guys never left. Right, my re-emergence onto the scene started with Bomb Threat. Remember Bomb Threat? My kids called me up all excited one day. I didn't have any files related to Bomb Threat after several moves, but they suddenly remembered we had an old videotape of gameplay. And they rushed over to to dig it out of storage, and then I had something to go on. So I analyzed the heck out of that tape, got to work, and recreated the game from scratch, first using emulators and then later switching to an actual color computer. John Linville even produced cartridges of the game. My son Joel did the artwork for the cover on it, which was a total surprise. He came to my house one day and said, look what I did. This is what you can put on for the bomb threat cartridge. And I was like, wow. So my next big project was OmniStar, that game that I started but never finished back in 1984, where you're hacking into a worldwide computer network. And I couldn't find my design notes or any files for the game, so I programmed it, again from scratch, based on what I remembered of the basic concepts. When you start the game, you get this intimidating message. Criminal penalties under Section 3.02, eh? Therein lies a tale. A tale of one of the 2 times in my life I was almost arrested. See this sign? There are signs like this outside children's playgrounds in San Francisco. I think the idea is to discourage any funny uncles that might want to hang out at the children's playground. My family and grandchildren were at one of these playgrounds once, and they sent me back to the car to get an extra lawn chair and some food and stuff. And I'm on my way back, and a couple of cops stopped me. And they were thinking I might be a dangerous weirdo, so I had to do some fast talking to keep out of the hoosegow. So down at the bottom it says Section 3.02 Park Code. I thought, that must be some section. I better look that up. So I looked it up. You know what Section 3.02 says? It says, obey all signs. That's it. That's all it says. And so this incident is commemorated in a very small way in OmniStar. I never did much with BASIC back in the day, so I decided for a change of pace I'd give that a try. But all the overhead of line numbers and continuation characters and so forth drove me mad. So I programmed a BASIC preprocessor in Python that would convert BASIC code in this sort of BASIC 09-ish format into a legit disk extended color BASIC source. It's called DECBPP, Disk Extended Basic Preprocessor. It assigns line numbers, tacks lines together, throws out comments, and so forth. It's not a proper parser, so it's not all that clever. It doesn't handle nested ifs for one thing, but it does keep me sane. DECBPP and this pretty syntax highlighting is included on Ron Klein's CoCoPie distribution, by the way, if the idea of working with the VI text editor doesn't give you hives. For example, I used it to preprocess a source for this kiosk program I use to allow people to play my games at conventions like this one. That's what's running on my CoCo 3 and on my table today. You probably have some questions about what you see listed here, so let's go through some of them. Temple of Ram 2 is the original game that's been enhanced a bit. I expanded the maze by 45% and added 2 new monsters. Skulls are nasty little aardvarks that come at you really fast. And then there are ghosts. They're sneaky. They're invisible until you get near them, and then oops, watch out. You can get a bit of a jump scare there. There's even a level builder utility on templeofram.com, although it's a bit fussy. It involves, you can Photoshop a graphic of where all the rooms are and where all the monsters are, and then I have a script that reads that file that you can upload to the website and then converts it into data and then builds you a custom version of Temple of Ram that has your level in it. And there's an example Photoshop file that has a very simple maze with all the monsters and stuff that you can use as like to figure out how you do it. But it's really, really fussy, so I don't think anybody's really done that yet. The 3 20-minute cassettes are one with the snows of yesteryear, as you might expect, but I started with a disassembly of the game cartridge that was done by Bill Astle, aka Lost Wizard. The Shanghai game, listed on the menu, plays a custom version of Shanghai with a few improvements. The original game had a secret color set that was accessed by clicking on a very hard to find spot somewhere on the left of the screen. That color set was the original colors during testing that Activision changed at the last second. I much preferred the previous colors, so I hid them as an Easter egg. The secret color set is a secret no more. Activision's color set is listed as RGB1. Mine is RGB2. With more memory to play with, the victory screen shows much more of the Victory Dragon display, but I still couldn't fit the entire thing. The rights to Temple of Rom reverted back to me after 2 years. That was in the contract and everything. So I have no problem selling Temple of Rom. But the legal rights to Shanghai are murky. So I'm limited in what I can legally do with it. So it's only on my GitHub for historical and educational purposes. But you may have noticed another Shanghai item on the menu, Shanghai 2. This is a version of Shanghai for 512K that has those same improvements, plus a little bit more. The new loading screen, this one right here, is what Activision originally wanted it to look like before we abandoned that way early on due to severe lack of memory. And the victory screen now shows the entire full-screen dragon in all its fire-breathing glory. This color chart is one that Dale and I cooked up for a Rainbow article on the CoCo 3. The original assembler code had a glitch, though. It changed the palette registers in a way that was a bit sloppy, so there were white dashes down the left side of the screen. At the time, we didn't know what that was about, so we just left it in. Nowadays, that's less of a mystery, so recently I was able to consult with some people online and fix that. And this is my roguelike game, Dragon Maze. Somebody did one of those online coding challenges to code a roguelike game in BASIC. And I came up with this, but never formally submitted it to the competition because I was too lazy to fill out the paperwork. To which somebody commented later, now let's see, you were too lazy to fill out the paperwork, but you weren't too lazy to come up with this game, right? So it was fun to play with maze generation, though. I'd never done that before. Here's the maze it generates. It's random each time. And you're the O in the upper left, and you hit the arrow keys to move around the maze, picking up gold and or swords with which you can slay dragons that are roaming around. If you pick up all the gold before a dragon eats you, you win. The AI for the dragons was fun to work out. It's not all that great a game, but I had a lot of fun working on it. Next up is my Wordle clone for the CoCo 3. I had fun seeding the word list with candy-related words. This is written in BASIC, of course. Pretty much all of these games are on my GitHub, so you can play with them too, or paw through the source code. This Lights Out puzzle is an oldie but a goodie. Google for Lights Out puzzle to learn some strategies for beating it. You use the joystick to click on various squares to toggle the lights in that general vicinity. The goal is to get all the lights to go out. Again, written in BASIC, and it's on the GitHub. This one's kind of a curiosity. OmniStar 84. Now remember I said I couldn't find the notes for OmniStar, so I had to code it from faint memories of the basic concepts. When I was moving out of my house of 26 years, I discovered a dusty cardboard box at the bottom of a stack of boxes at the far corner of my basement. Inside was a treasure trove of notes and listings from back in the day, including a listing of the source of an incomplete first attempt at coding the game from 1984. There were also all of my design notes. It was originally going to be a lot more convoluted than it ended up being many years later. One challenge was that some sections of the listing were garbled. The dot matrix printer that I used to print it was a bit wonky. So it had sections where about 10 lines of code would be printed very close together, and it was very difficult to everything overlapped, and it was very hard to read. There was another section with about 20 to 25 lines that were all printed on one line. That section was hopeless. So with a lot of detective work, uh, we figured it out. Grant Blodo and myself typed it in, and after a lot of debugging and some important detective work from Paul Fiscalleri, I now have a working program you can play around with. I hadn't remembered that I had made my own font for the game. It's like a OCR Micker font, like you'd see at the bottom of checks. I'd say I was probably 10% done before I quit, and I can't remember why I did. And there are interesting sound effects with each keystroke, too. They sound a bit like DTMF. It's not a playable game, and I have no plans to finish it. It's just a historical oddity. But you can play with it on my CoCo 3 at my table, if you like. Here is another program written in BASIC called Fox Hunt. It was inspired by ham radio fox hunts I'd participated in using direction finding equipment to search for a radio signal hidden somewhere in your city. So for this game, you position the cursor on a square, hit return, and you'll get an indication of how close you are to a fox hidden randomly somewhere on the grid. How few guesses it will take you, will it take you to zero in on your target? A fun part of developing this game was trying to figure out how to draw the fox using the smallest draw statement possible. And this is something I'm working on at the moment that I whimsically named Temple of Rogue. It's sort of a roguelike game, very reminiscent of Temple of Rom in the way that the screen scrolls. I haven't gotten very far with it. It's barely playable, but I'm just goofing around with it. Again, it's on my GitHub, so you can peek over my shoulder or fiddle with it if you want. Well, that about wraps it up, and this slide is like where you'd find all those things, so you can like bring out your phone and take a picture. So let's open it up for questions or discussion now. Yes? He was going to sue me, yeah. I like him on balance. You know, it's interesting. For the last 4 years, I have lived in a senior living facility due to strange circumstances that I won't get into. I'm a little bit younger than a lot of the people there. I know a lot of people there that are my friends that are 90% awesome and 10% aardvarks. And that's just how it is. And you have to, yeah. And I've just learned to take the bad with the good and the good with the bad, and and sometimes we're getting along just famously, and sometimes they're snapping at me, and so that's just and there's one person that I know, and I say, people will say, yeah, I hate her. I know she's your friend, but I hate her. I say, well, yeah, no, she is my friend. I know she's a lot, but yeah. So that's how I feel about Steve. He was great, usually. Yeah, Dale Lear. We were pretty much best friends, although really Dale was a very, very nice person and everybody was his best friend. He was a co-worker of mine. We both worked at the same company in San Rafael, California for 13 years. It was called Fair Isaac and Company. They moved their headquarters to Minnesota, actually. I saw a hand in the back. What was the glitch? Oh, the white, yeah. It all had to do with the timing of when you switched palettes. That colors chart had 64 colors, 64 unique colors on the screen at the same time. You can't do that with a CoCo 3. So how did we do it? Well, we cheat. So we would count horizontal syncs, and at a certain point, as it was painting the screen, we would switch the palettes. You can only do, I think it's 16 at a time, and so we do 16, and then at the right time we'd switch the palettes to the other 16, and then switch them again, and then switch them again, and get all 64. So where we were switching the pallets, it had to be done with a very precise timing relative to the horizontal sink. And so we knew nothing about that. So it's a miracle that it worked as well as it did. But we figured out exactly, here's how to count horizontal sinks, and then right at just the right time, we'll switch all the pallets. So we even made like a little excuse. I can't remember what we said in the article. It's like, yeah, you see those white lines? Yeah. What did we say? It's like, has to do with the timing. Uh, I can't remember how we kind of glossed it over, but we did mention the little dashes, but we made some sort of an excuse for it. Uh, well, the box, it's amazing what was in there. All the OmniStar notes. There's all the actual graph paper that I used to plot out all the rooms in Temple of Ram. Uh, what else? I don't remember what else. Uh, that's the most important stuff, I think. Let's see, Temple of Ram. Oh, correspondence to and from Tandy. Obviously that was where I got uh, the contract details for Shanghai that were on a slide. Uh, the I had the sales figures for Temple of Ram at one point. That was in there, and that was on a slide. Um, and on the sales figures for Temple of Ram, it was like they had to put at least one copy of Temple of Ram in every Radio Shack store. Well, there's like thousands and thousands of those, so it's like, zoom, the graph went like this, and then it went way down for the rest of the year, and then came November, and it went shot right up because of Christmas. So, yes. Oh, that's a good question. I have some theories. At the time, they had decided to go with the CoCo 3, and they were looking to have CoCo 3 games, and that was a CoCo 1-2 game. So, so they wanted a CoCo 3 game, but they couldn't really tell me, could you redo this for a CoCo 3, or because, and they couldn't tell me, well, I don't want it because it's not for a CoCo 3, because nobody was supposed to know about the CoCo 3 at that point. So sometime after that, Dale got his prototype CoCo 3, which looked pretty much like a normal CoCo 3. I mean, it had some wires going crisscrossing, but it wasn't like it was like a breadboarded or anything. um, I don't really. At that point, it was like, well, I could do a CoCo 3 game. Well, I mean, it was about that time that then Shanghai came around, so that kept me busy for a while. But yeah, and then yeah, exactly. They told me they didn't want it, right? And they didn't tell me why. So yeah, rejected by Tandy. Yes. Oh well. And I had nothing, and then they found that VCR tape. I played that thing and took screenshots and tried to figure, okay, this sprite is like 8 pixels wide and 8 pixels high. How did I draw a tractor in that space? It looks like I did this. Yeah, that looks right. So I had to sort of reverse engineer it from a videotape. Yes. Bomb threat? Well, I am selling it on my own now. Uh, well, and we did sell it. We sold it on a cartridge. John Linville made a cartridge of it. Oh, back then. Yeah, no, I didn't. Yeah, yeah. Uh, Dale Lear was very big on sending his games. He didn't like being dependent on one company, so he sent stuff to Tandy, but he also sent stuff to Tom Mix and to all the different vendors. Uh, and I did not follow that example, and I really can't tell you why. I really don't know why. I just kind of went, well, Tandy doesn't want it. Boo hoo. I'm sad now. So that probably would have been a good idea. Could have made a lot of money. Darn. You know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wow, that light's bright. I got to stop looking in that direction. Yeah. I did it. I did it. Did I see a hand way back there? Or were you? Okay. Okay. All right.